Hello. Thank you for watching Taxpayer Alert. I'm Al Segalla. I'll be your moderator. I'm also president of the Calaveras County Taxpayer Association, and we're most concerned about your tax dollar. And these shows are educational, and we try to get experts in the field of things that are important to our community. And this is no exception. Our guest this session is Mike Albrecht, and Mike has a lot of experience in the forest. And also, he's going to be talking about Tucare. Mike, welcome. And
Thanks, Al.
What does Tucare mean? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you. First of all, I want to say thanks a lot for having me on and having a chance to talk about Tucare, which I will explain in a minute. I'll tell you quickly a little bit about myself. I am a registered forester, and I grew up in the woods in a little place called Pescadero, which is a little town between Half Moon Bay and Santa Cruz. And like so many foresters and eventually folks that get into logging, I started out in a little firewood business of my own and really loved that. I was graduated from Pescadero High School with a class of 26, and I was the center on the basketball team, which shows you how small our school was.
26 people, not 1926.
No, 26 people, and I was the center on the basketball team, so we had a very small school. We did not win very many games. I went on to get my master's in forestry at Duke University, which has a really good basketball team, and probably that's what I remember most about Duke is their great basketball team. But I got a great forestry education there, and from there went on to a brief career with the biomass industry back here in California and helped develop wood-fired power plants, and then got into forestry work with a great family called Joe and Joyce Martin, had Joe Martin Logging, and so we've had a very interesting career. Now I'm president of a company called Sierra Resource Management, and we employ folks that do great work in the woods. We have a logging company, and we specialize in thinning the forest.
Well, that's great.
So Tucare, yeah, you asked about Tucare.
Yeah.
Tucare stands for Tuolumne County Alliance for Resources and Environment. And it's an organization that's been around for 30 years. And folks often, they say Tucare, resources and environment. They go, well, what are you? Are you an environmental group, or are you do you believe in using resources? And, of course, the answer I tell them is both. We really believe in wise use, and we try to teach people about conservation, which is the wise use of natural resources and how things work in rural America.
That's good. What is the purpose of Tucare? Is it to interact with the public so the public can better understand about the forest and natural resources? What's your mission statement?
Yeah, our mission, Al, is to educate people about natural resource management, and we really try to emphasize working with kids. We do a lot of tours for kids. Since our organization, again, we're 30 years old. And I'll back up and I want to let you know, Tucare, the ARE stands for Alliance for Resources and Environment. There used to be 10 or 11 ARE groups around the Sierras up and down California. One was called CARE, that stood for Klamath. One was called SHARE, that stands for Shasta Alliance. They're all gone now. There's only 2 left out of the 11. So we're still here, and we're proud to be here, and we really focus on education. And we do that a lot of that through tours. We take a lot of tours for kids out in the woods, show them. We really want kids to understand, okay, when you turn on the faucet and water comes out, where's that all come from? When you see lumber at Lowe's or Home Depot, how's that lumber get on the shelf? Where's that beef come from that's in the store? When you flip your light on, where's that electricity? How's that all come? Where's that the source of all that? So we really focus on teaching kids and politicians and adults about what we do in rural America and how we make it work.
I noticed that if the forest is properly managed, we get more water because the trees are evenly spaced. and which means the snow can go to the ground and not melt from on the tree branches, and that the trees are more healthy because they get more sunshine, and so you have more production of wood, and you have more water coming if the forest is well managed. Also, you have less fire danger because you don't have the ladder fuels that you otherwise would have. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. And what's going on in California right now, and the fires we're having, has really brought this whole issue of forest management and what's wrong with our forest to a forefront. And I want to say right now that Tucare, our hearts and prayers are just going out to these people that have lost everything up in Paradise. We hear updates every day. It's thousands and more thousands of homes, and more people have died. And we really do pray for those folks. I've had folks, though, tell me, we don't want your prayers so much. We want something changed. We want to see something done differently because we cannot stand. They're afraid. People are afraid of these. So, thinning the forest, huge benefit to not only fire protection, but you started out with water. 60% of the water in California originates in the Sierras. Yes. And they're called watersheds for a reason. And trees, if you just think of trees as umbrellas over the soil, they protect the soil and they shed the water, and that's how it all starts. So they filter things, and if they're thinned out, spaced properly, they don't burn up so quickly. Yeah, I understand that when the land is privately owned, when the forests are privately owned, we don't have such a problem with forest fires. Could it be that those lands are properly managed? Well, there's a big difference between private forestry management and what our federal government does, and I got to say, the federal government has a long way to go in terms of properly managing our forests, and I don't want to just beat up on the Forest Service. They do an awful good job of fighting fire, but 62% of their budget now goes to fighting fire, and we would like to see a lot more of that budget go to preventative work ahead of the fire. Thin the forests, get out and do some really good forest management. Private industry does a better job. Of course, private industry has a profit motive, and their job is to make money and supply wood for our country. Forest Service used to be a much more of a multiple use. They had a lot of different things they managed for, and over the last 20 years, it's kind of turned to a preservation type mode, and we want to see that turn around. Yeah, the cost benefit ratio is to tree farming, which is basically planting the trees evenly spaced, or forest thinning. Forest thinning apparently does not produce enough in the thinning process to pay for itself, so it needs to have funds that come from the taxpayer. Is that correct? Well, it is, but it could pay for itself. One of the things on our public land, which is managed by the National Forest, right now we can't thin trees that are over 30 inches in diameter. So all of the larger trees have to be left. There's a lot of history behind that, but a lot of it's driven by litigation, trying to protect the spotted owl. And of course, what we're finding is in these horrific fires, every tree from 2 inches in diameter to 6 feet in diameter burns up. So some of the higher value trees, if we could cut just a few of those, it would help pay for the thinning of all the other trees that need to come out. That makes sense. Yeah. And also, profit is not a dirty word. Oh, absolutely not. Yeah. I brought this board along, Al, just to highlight for people that we do use a lot of wood. And that's one of the things we try to produce in the forest. This is 1 board foot. Okay. And in America, we use 60 billion of these every year. Wow. In a normal year. And is this showing up on the camera all right? Yeah. And so just to give the folks an idea, well, how much is 60 billion board feet? Well, this is a regular, like a fence board, and it's about 2 feet long. If you stacked these end to end and went to the moon, which is 240,000 miles away, 60 billion board feet would go to the moon and back, and up again and back over 40 times. Oh, wow. That's how much wood we use in America. Wow. And we get it from Canada. But that's right. That's an excellent point that I was going to get to. We have all this resource in America. We actually have 750 million acres of forests in America, which if you cover California with forests completely, that's 100 million acres. That's how big California is. So if you put 7.5 Californias together, that's how much forest we have.
Right.
And yet we find ourselves as a second leading importer of lumber in the world. So
wow.
we have a long way to go in meeting our own demand for our forest products. And right now we're watching them rot from bugs and tree mortality or fire and burn up. Yeah. And so we've got to change this whole dynamic. And it's finally gotten the attention of Congress. Our governor's really after it. But it's just a shame that it takes such human tragedy and loss to get folks' attention. And if we don't have attention now, if we don't do something now, we never will.
Right. I think we got attention from our Congressman McClintock. I've heard him speak several times about, I think to quote him best I can, he says, you're either going to, that wood is going to leave. It's either going to burn up or be carried out.
Yeah, we don't have a better advocate than we do with Congressman McClintock. He really is a strong supporter of good forest management and wants to see things change. And I think they can. You know?
Well, at one time it was considered maybe weird to suggest that perhaps the national forest would have long-term leases or sell portions of the forest to the private sector, which does a better job of management and also increases employment and also increases the overall economy and supplies more wood. And there doesn't seem to be any downside in doing that other than fear of profit.
Well, and you know, I don't think we'll ever see the Forest Service sell off land to the private sector. I don't, as much as that makes sense and has some upside. But what is happening is that the U.S. Forest Service is starting to team up with the private sector and do cooperative agreements and cooperative projects. In fact, in Tuolumne County, we have a newly signed master stewardship agreement between the county and the Forest Service. And it allows the county to actually design and put forward projects on public land with the blessing of the Forest Service, but we can use local foresters to do the work. We don't have to rely completely on Forest Service staff. So it's a kind of a new thing, and it shows a lot of promise, and it shows the Forest Service and the federal government working with local communities to try and get more thinning done, which is really what we're trying to, that's what we want to do.
So if the county saw that even age harvesting a tree farm does make sense, at least in some areas, then that would have the same result as if the land were privately owned.
Yeah, there's quite a distinct difference between what goes on public land and on private land. And private land with even age harvesting and clear cutting is done very well. Sierra Pacific does a lot of that. They replant, and they're really replanting trees that take full sunlight to grow quickly. That's what even age management's about.
Right.
The public's spoken pretty loudly. They don't want to see that on public land.
Back then.
Yeah.
And that was ideological.
Yeah. But we can do a lot on the public land if we just get in and thin the forests out. I mean, we can supply our own needs if we just get in and really, at this point, there are so many other positive outcomes of thinning besides just getting lumber out. It'll protect the wildlife habitat. We've burned up countless numbers of protected activity centers for spotted owls. Things we're trying to protect are burning up. It will improve our watershed. It will prevent erosion. It will, I don't know if folks know how much the forests filter our air. If you go back to just some basic science,
carbon dioxide,
we exhale that. Trees take it in.
Right.
Trees, through photosynthesis, take in carbon dioxide, and take the carbon and put it in the tree, and they exhale the oxygen.
Right, which we need.
Which we need. So it's a wonderful relationship. I think actually part of our great creator came up with that, but some folks think that evolved. It doesn't matter. But it's a wonderful filtering of our air. And even the panel on climate change recently, the international panel said that healthy forests are the key to future climate, keeping our climate good, keeping our climate on a positive. They said they're inextricably connected. Healthy forests in our air. So.
Of course, the UN doesn't have an excellent reputation for truthful analysis of global warming.
Well, yeah, and I'm not going to get into the weeds on where we go on that, but they do recognize that forests are a key to solving our global warming issues. However bad they are, forests really they're like they said they can take out 25% of the carbon dioxide out of the air.
Now, what are some of the things currently that Tucare is working on?
You know, I looked back. We've been in existence 30 years, Tucare's, and they're still the same issues that we started with 30 years ago, and we've just touched on them, on getting our forests thinned out and properly managed, preventing wildfire, helping support the cattlemen in the beef industry and being able to graze cattle in the woods. That just, when California was first settled, there were hundreds and hundreds of thousands of cattle and sheep in these forests grazing, and we're down to just a few thousand now. And we all like beef, but there's folks that just want to see all the cattle out of the woods, and they actually do a benefit in grazing off some of the brush. So we support that. Certainly support our mining operations that go on, and then of course water is huge. We're always wanting to this move to drain some of our lakes to try to promote fish that aren't necessarily native. Doesn't make sense.
They call it sustainability.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we're watching these things and trying to bring wise use, multiple use, common sense into the equation, and we're still here. Yeah. That's good.
Well, it seems like you're just the best hope for the future when it comes to natural resources. One of the things that questions is what is the main issues that Tucare is currently working on, and one of my understandings is the tours. You have an annual tour, and then a
summit, resource summit. Every year we do a large tour and a summit. We just got done with our, and we do this annually, just got done with that. The theme of the tour this year was called Taming the Beast. And of course, Taming the Beast was taming wildfire. We're trying to figure out, how do we turn this around? So we took legislators and business folks and on a bus tour out to the woods, showed them our logging operations, how we thin the forest, what benefit that is. And then we had a summit the next day at the fairgrounds, and Congressman McClintock spoke, and we had folks from the Farm Bureau, from CAL FIRE, the Forest Service. And the theme was, from everybody, was consistently, we have got to get our forests thinned out. We have got to change this paradigm, and we're not going to do it without a strong timber industry. And so we're working really that is our number one goal right now, is see if we can get our forests back into a well-managed condition where they are not so loaded with fuel. Yeah,
I understand that bug trees, insect infestation in the trees relates to forest management. And does that have to do with spacing and water, or what?
Yeah. Well, we are in a tremendous drought right now. We had one good year a couple of years ago, but really for the last 7 or 8 years, we're in a big drought, and they come and go. Right. And we'll get into some wet seasons, I'm sure, in the years ahead. But right now, if you kind of look at the Sierras as a giant soda, if you will, with a lot of water, and all those trees as straws pulling water out. We got to get rid of some of these straws, because they're pulling so much water out of the earth through it's called evapotranspiration, through the roots, up the tree, and out the leaves and into the atmosphere. Yeah. And when they're overstocked too many trees, they do burn, but they also invite insect attack. And insects, particularly the bark beetle, they know when trees are under stress, when they're dry, and they attack them. And we have now got over 130 million dead trees in the Sierras that are just kindling, waiting for, well, they're fueling some of these big fires. And so thinning the forest out will take the available water and put it to, available to fewer trees, which will be good for the trees that remain.
Right.
And the trees that we take out, we'll make lumber out of them, make products out of them.
I understand that the tree has, underneath the bark has sap, and when it doesn't have enough moisture, there's not enough sap that protects the tree from the bark beetles. Is that correct? Yeah,
what a bark beetle does, the adult bores in through the bark and it gets into this layer called the cambium layer, which is just the thin layer that actually is growing inside the bark. Believe it or not, most of a tree is dead, just like our fingernails or hair. It's just support tissue. But inside the bark is a cambium layer, and the adults bore in there, and if the tree has enough moisture, it creates sap and pushes that adult back out. And that's what makes those little pitch tubes that you see. And when there's enough moisture, a tree can ward off that insect attack. When there's not enough moisture, not enough sap, the adult's able to bore in, lay eggs, and then the larvae eat all around inside the cambium and eventually kill the tree. Kill the tree's ability to move products up and down from the leaves to the roots. So, it's...
What are some of the new things that's occurred? I went on a Tucare tour and also a summit 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I was younger then, And
it's good you remember it, though.
And I was very, very much impressed. And you had some new equipment they were using at there was this piece of equipment that was a part of it was like a clamp and a saw, and it went up and it grabbed a tree and then a little part of it, a little saw, and zip, and then it took the tree over and put it down, and I was really impressed with that. What are some of the new things that are happening in forestry machines?
Well, the newest things that are happening, a lot of things are starting to go to remote control. We've had some classes and lectures on what's coming with logging equipment, and it's almost like what's going on with the automotive industry. It's getting more and more remote, and I think someday a lot of logging equipment will be able to be run from the pickup truck with a computer, and the machines are just going to be out there working. That's a ways off. I really hope that doesn't happen in some respects. But really what we have right now is some of the most environmentally sensitive equipment in the world thinning our forests. And you just described a feller buncher, and they've gotten better and bigger, and they still do the same thing. And it's interesting, we take kids out on tours. It kind of shows why these tours of the forest are important, because you just described it, this feller buncher will grab a tree, saw it off, pick it up, and lay it down, and it does it in a way where it can set it down very carefully in the forest, doesn't damage other trees. So the kids will watch that, and I'll ask them, okay, how many of you think when that tree got cut down, how many of you think the tree felt that? And I don't care if the trees if the kids are kindergarten to college, about half to two-thirds of them raise their hand and say, yeah, I think the tree felt that. And I go, well, okay, when your dad mows the lawn, how many of you think the grass can feel the lawnmower? None of them think the grass feels the lawnmower. So kids think trees have feelings. Yeah. And a lot of that has to do with Disney and such. But it's interesting, kind of a mindset we have to overcome with kids and some adults, that it's okay, these trees don't feel.
Well, now what do you see looking ahead? Of course, we're getting new machines maybe and more efficient ways to log. But what's to happen with the timber industry, and what are the current trends? We know what the trends were 20 years ago. Yeah. But what are they now?
The trends have been really poor, Al. I mean, in 1980, there were in California, there were about 150 sawmills working and thousands of people working in the woods and a lot getting done. Now there's 27 sawmills left in the state. So it's really trended down. So we need to, I think we've kind of bottomed out. We need to have a resurgence in the industry, and I think we're going to. We're finding now with so many fires and so much mortality from beetles that even environmental groups are starting to say, wait a minute, what we used to preach 20 years ago, stop all this, preserve everything, is not working. So I'm hopeful that folks are going to get together, and some of us do in collaborative groups where we work with environmentalists and say, okay, we don't agree on everything, but we agree we got to thin the forest. And we're starting to see more of that attitude, and I'm hopeful that that's going to build and be prevalent in the future.
Especially if you can use the wood.
When we can use the wood, we need the wood. We not only need the wood, we also use it for power. We make electrical power out of biomass, which is we chip the slash and use that and burn it in a power plant and make power.
I understand that the slash also has a purpose to add nutrients to the soil for future trees. And when trees are removed, at least some of the slashes remains in place to just rot.
Right.
And become part of the soil.
Right. Yeah. There's a very natural balance out there that we don't want to interrupt too much with our work. One of the things that a lot of folks are advocating now is doing a lot more burning, prescribed burning, and burn out some of the underbrush. Kind of a light fire that doesn't harm the soil so much as these catastrophic fires. The trouble with that is you can't really prescribe burn until you've thinned out some of the undergrowth.
Then you lose the big trees.
Yeah, so you want to do it in a 1-2 punch and first thin the forest, then go ahead and do a prescribed burn and keep the fuels reduced. We need to do that in spades around the Sierras.
If somebody wanted to get more information about the topic that we're discussing, how would they do that?
Well, contact Tucare if they'd like at www.tucare.com. And I don't have the phone number, but I think your staff has it, so it could be posted, I think.
It's on the screen.
It's on the screen, yeah.
And so is the website.
Yeah, good.
Okay.
Yeah, did I say it right?
Yeah, you did.
And contact us. Membership to Tucare is very inexpensive, and Tucare, the A in Tucare stands for an alliance, and that's what we are. We're an alliance of like-minded people from a variety of different partisanships everywhere. We want to see things done correctly in the woods.
Yeah, and I really appreciate, as a taxpayer, the outreach to children in the schools.
Yeah.
They need to have some basic understanding of what industry is all about.
Absolutely, especially our kids that live up here. And there's good jobs in this industry still, and there's great jobs in rural America. And we want to show kids what those opportunities are.
Well, I hope there's going to be many more tours for Tucare in the forest, as I remember enjoying them. I couldn't make the one this year because I had another appointment.
Yeah.
But anyway, Mike, we sure appreciate having you, and we look forward to talking to you again.
Thanks, Al. I very much appreciate being here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you for watching Taxpayer Alert. We'll see you next time.